Africa will use the Brics Summit in Goa in India to exchange views and also share best practices in developing inclusive growth. Brics countries are meeting to take stock of progress and also push some of the projects they've already put in place. President Jacob Zuma arrived in the resort town to join his colleagues from Brazil, Russia, India and China. The world's major emerging economies, the BRICS, are converging in Goa. Their presence is already being felt with the establishment of the BRICS Bank. South Africa's trade relations with BRICS countries have increased significantly from 123 billion rands in 2011 to 147 billion rands in 2015. And more investments for the country is coming. A world-renowned pharmaceutical giant is also set to invest 1.3 billion rands for the production of cheaper cancer drugs for the global market. And besides the summit, the leaders are also holding bilateral meetings.
We are really quite pleased that with every meeting of BRICS, we are moving forward. Very soon, South Africa will be inviting the president of the BRICS New Development Bank, together with other partners, for the official launch of the BRICS Africa Regional Center in South Africa. Remember that besides that, we've also looked at the other avenues of financial institutions coming together and working together in the name of doing trade with each other using our own currencies.
And our presidential correspondent, Zwandile Mbeje, is in Goa in India for the 8th BRICS Summit. Let's now cross live to him to find out what's happening at the moment.
Thank you very much, Obriel. Indeed, it's a summit of the emerging major economies, South Africa, China, Russia, India and Brazil. So they've gathered here in Goa, one of the most beautiful cities here in India. In fact, this city has a very lovely history. It's one of those small cities here in India, but it's actually one of the richest cities in this entire country. So you can see whatever decisions that the leaders will come and do here, so they will be inspired that it is a city that really can do things. As I said, the leaders are here, and those who are charged with the responsibility of driving the agenda of this grouping, which has become very important, BRICS. So I'm joined by the president, or rather the vice president of the new BRICS Bank, who is based in China, Leslie Mastorp, to talk more about the developments regarding the bank and the projects that the leaders have assigned you to do. Welcome to SABC, Mr. Mastorp.
Thank you very much for having me.
So you are here to report to the leaders the kind of progress you've made since the bank is now up and running. Just tell us more about it.
So as you know, the bank was launched last year in Ufa in Russia at the last BRICS Leaders Summit. So it's a little bit more than 1 year, so it's a good time to reflect on what has been achieved over the last year, what has been the key milestones, and to brief the heads of state around what the next challenges and the next big milestones will be for the bank going forward. So over the last year, I'd say there were sort of 3, maybe 4 major achievements. Firstly, the bank managed to achieve a AAA credit rating in the domestic Chinese market, which is very important because that gives the investors confidence about the creditworthiness of the institution. Secondly, that credit rating allowed us to issue debt in the domestic market, and we raised 3 billion renminbi about 3 months ago. Thirdly, and very importantly, we concluded our first set of projects, 1 project each in the 5 countries, to the total of just under $1 billion. And then finally, the bank has signed memorandum of understanding with all of the major multilateral banks, because these institutions have existed for 50, 60, in some cases 70 years. We are new. There's so much lessons that we can draw from these other multilateral banks. So we're going to be briefing the leaders tomorrow about the progress we've made and highlighting to them the next steps.
Let's come closer to home, South Africa. What sort of assistance have you been able to extend?
So in South Africa, we announced a project which is a funding of the transmission network. So it's a loan to Eskom, effectively. And through that project, we will connect renewable energy, solar power producers to the national grid. The bank has a very strong mandate around sustainability and sustainable infrastructure. In fact, it's part of our DNA, part of our legal articles of agreement. So there's a big focus on sustainability, as well as therefore renewable energy. So that was our first project, but we are now already beginning to look at the next batch of projects. Over the next 6 months, we're likely to fund further projects in South Africa, not just in energy, it will also be in transport and related sectors.
We know that our SOEs sometimes do struggle with funding. So are these areas that we're also going to be looking at?
Look, state-owned enterprises have an important role to play in infrastructure. So let's take Transnet, for example. It's fundamentally responsible for developing sustainable long-term transport infrastructure, whether it's rail, ports, and so on. To the extent that those objectives intersect with the New Development Bank, we will do projects where we can co-finance with the major state-owned enterprises as well.
What are you going to be telling leaders tomorrow, and what are the difficulties that you've been facing since you started your work?
I think first, on the positive side, we are going to report that the bank is at this stage very much committed to the idea of local currency funding. As you might know, all of the banks have the US dollar as their reporting currency. Their capital is in US dollars because US dollar is really the reserve currency of the world. However, it is possible today to raise local currency bonds. Our financial markets, as you might know, are pretty deep. Even in South Africa, we've got a very deep and liquid bond market. So there's sufficient capacity for us to raise, let's say, South African rand, in other words, for the New Development Bank to issue a bond in South Africa, and then to on-lend in South African rand. So in that way, you do not have the foreign currency risk exposure which you would have today. We made a loan to Eskom, for example, of $180 million. If the currency depreciates, then obviously the cost to the borrower, the cost goes up. If we're able to lend in local currency, we're able to manage the foreign exchange risk better. So the one report that we will give is that the bank will explore next, after we've now done the Chinese renminbi bond, we're now looking at the Indian offshore rupee market. It's called the Masala bond, where we effectively raise rupees and then on-lend in rupees. South Africa is very high on the agenda because of the strong financial markets we have and a strong bond market. But we will also report to the leaders about some of the other challenges, because our 5 economies, with the exception of India, that's growing at 7.5, 7.7%, most of our economies are slowing down. At the moment, Brazil has an economic recession, Russia as well. South Africa is growing just marginally in the positive territory. So we have to look at ways of mitigating that risk, the fact that our economies are facing a downward pressure. But we're hoping that the bank's focus on infrastructure, that in and of itself can be a catalyst for growth, because investment in infrastructure can be one of those growth spurts that can play a role to augment other economic sectors.
Towards closure, I know that people are waiting for South Africa to set up the Africa Regional Center. I know you're not going to go into details because these negotiations are ongoing, but just bring us up to speed with where we are with the center.
When the bank was formed, the New Development Bank, the headquarters, China won the right to host the headquarters, and the agreements make provision that South Africa will have the first regional center. So it's a very important part of the overall architecture of the new development bank. Naturally, because we started in China, our focus has been to build the headquarters, right? To hire staff, to set up systems, to do our fundraising, etc. However, the next high priority for us is to put the infrastructure in place, hire the staff, get the facilities in the premises to open the Africa Regional Center. We're at an advanced stage of dialogue with the South Africa government about the detailed modalities of that office. So at this stage, all I can say is that it's high priority. We are quite far down the road in putting in place all the building blocks, and we will make an announcement in due course with the South African government about the precise timing of the opening and the launch of the office.
Thank you very much, Mr. Master.
Thank you.
That was the Vice President of the new Brics Bank talking to us about the developments at the bank and what they intend to do and the kind of work that has already been done and the kind of ambitious projects they are looking forward to funding. And indeed, tomorrow we will hear the leaders who would also give us an indication of how they want to take forward this process. Indeed, they have started with the bank. We expect them perhaps to come with more projects. I said earlier that they have also invited the regional leaders, the countries in the region, to be part of this Brics Summit. So this process was started way back in 2013 when South Africa invited fellow African countries to be part of the BRICS grouping, and then we saw it happened in Brazil as well, South America, and then we saw again in Russia. So this is a process of really trying to include everyone. Indeed, this grouping is seeking to be to actually change what many say is a global economic landscape in the world. That is all we have for you for now. Let's go back to Johannesburg.
Well, many thanks to Mzwandi Lembeje there, who was coming to us live from the Indian resort town of Goa, where he is attending the 8th Brics Summit. Now, in other news,